The meeting is live. Just as a friendly reminder, just to try and mute your mic if you're not speaking. It just helps out with some of the feedback.
That's the microphone. That's the microphone. Okay. We got the mic through you on. I don't think I'm going to get on here. Why? I don't know.
This meeting is now called to order. I'd like to welcome everyone this evening. Just as a point, because I can't see everyone when we vote, we're going to kind of do it the opposite way. So I'll ask for those that are opposed, and if you're opposed, just speak up. Thank you. So we'll move right into the confirmation of the agenda.
That the board adopts the agenda for the meeting of September 8th, 2021.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Tom Charlton and Sherry Andrews. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, or I should say opposed. Sorry, I messed that up. I warned everybody I was going to do that, and then I did the opposite. So is anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. So that's carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? There are no delegations this evening, so we'll move into approval of previous minutes.
That the East Elgin Community Complex Board approves the minutes of the EECC board meeting held on June 2nd, 2021.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Pete Barber and Arthur Oslach. Are there any questions or concerns? I did notice one thing, and maybe I'm wrong, but it seems to me that Mark Widner's name is not on as present at the meeting, but yet he did vote on something later in the agenda. So Mark, is that correct? You were at the last meeting.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so I think that's the only thing I could see. Did anyone else see any errors or omissions? Okay, is anyone opposed to this resolution? Hearing none, that's carried. Thank you. We'll move into action items. The first item is the report from the CAO 2021 budget variance.
That the report respecting the 2021 budget variance be received as information.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Sherry Andrews and Tom Charlton. And I'll turn this over to the CAO if you'd like to give us some more information.
Thank you, Chair French. So this is, we're trying to get back into the process of having more routine meetings with the board. We'd like to start meeting 4 times a year again. And this is part of that process, is presenting variance reports. This variance report is kind of highlights the uncertainty that we're still addressing because of COVID-19. We were hoping for some more updates to our variance, some more billables, but they haven't panned out. So when we were looking at this, we were suggesting that we might be similar to last year, but now the expectation after some further discussions with staff is that our variance will likely be around the 120 rather than 90,000. So it is expected to be probably 30,000, and that's anticipating that we won't have further impacts this year. The reality is I think now we're expecting that in the next month or so we could have some further shutdowns. There is also the kind of looming regulation around vaccine passports, and we're monitoring it and getting a lot of inquiries right now and trying to figure out what the next steps are. But at this time, the province hasn't released the regulations. All they've done is held a press conference. So we're left with a lot of uncertainties at this time. They say that there will be an exemption for youth sports. Youth sports usually by the province means 16 plus. But a lot of the other municipalities we are consulting with are saying that they're applying it to anybody entering the facility who's over 12, or 12 or over, sorry. So there is a lot of gray area that we expect won't be sorted out until potentially next week, and hopefully not the week after, because that would give us with almost no implementation time. The plan right now to go ahead and try to enforce these new regulations when they come out is to bring in our bylaw enforcement contractor to kind of be the person at the door, so that we aren't putting the attendants at the rinks in a situation where they're going to have some potentially hard interactions with the community, initially in the first couple weeks at least, and we will have COVID-19 monies to fund that service. The COVID monies are kind of attributed to additional staff requirements or things in response to COVID-19, so that would be a good plan. But we're also hoping that Hockey Canada and the other organizations using the facilities will come out with some guidance documents themselves, and that we can work through the volunteers, so that the volunteers will be the ones who will do a lot of the tracking and present a lot of the data to the EEC administration, so that we kind of download the onus to make sure that people aren't showing up at the building without their passports, to make sure that they kind of are pre-registered to enter the building, and we're just looking at a list of names that we already have all the information for. So that's the kind of big off of the budget variance. But in terms of the budget variance, just to highlight, there is still a significant degree of uncertainty for the remainder of the year, and we likely won't have a clear picture for the next few weeks until we know what the next steps are for the province.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Are there any questions or comments? Pete?
Thank you, Mayor French. How effective were we in moving some of the staff to other responsibilities outside the complex in order to keep payroll cost in check?
That's a good question. In terms of a lot of the staff responsibilities, particularly this year, we already do kind of reassign some of the responsibilities to support the parks. So it wasn't as large a redistribution as you could get in the winter months, which was what we saw before. But I'll perhaps let Tom add anything that he might have to say respecting that.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. Through your worship, to Councillor Barber, we've tried to maintain a 50-50 split between our full-time complement working between the complex and the parks, bearing in mind that we don't want to weigh too heavy on either side of the fence, and we've looked at also some split shifting, so 4 hours at the complex, 4 hours in the park, but overall, we've done a very good distribution of our staff in maintaining our costs, so thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I have one if I could, Mary.
Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Mary. Just looking for what kind of anticipated cost are we going to have for having the security people at our door? Or is that paid for by COVID funding, or will that be with the municipalities' money?
That's a great question. So to start off with, the town of Elmer is already paying for a weekly retainer of $600. So that base would just be assumed by the town of Elmer. And then we would be paying for any cost on top of that. And it would be relatively related to the groups and that we anticipate to have problems with in the first kind of couple weeks. We anticipate that there will be kind of an acceptance after the first couple weeks, but initially there's going to be a lot of people that might try to cheat the system or just ignore it. So it's important to kind of have somebody who can represent a strong front right off the bat.
Okay. I guess it didn't really answer my question though. What kind of costing are we looking at?
So, the town of Elmer has about $69,000 or $70,000 left in COVID-19 funds. And we would use a portion of that for our end of it.
Okay.
So it would be minus the 600, 50% of whatever we did, but I don't think it would, having somebody out there for 8 hours a day for 3 weeks probably will only be a cost of under 10 grand, I'd imagine.
Okay, thank you.
Andy, I can also support you with that one. We're looking probably at the hot times, Councillor Widner, so that will be between 4:30 to 10:30, Monday to Friday, and then full days, possibly on Saturday, Sunday for the first week or two. Then after that, we're hoping to, as Andy had said, phase out the security aspect.
Okay, great place for the cruiser to park maybe when they're on their breaks. So. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions or concerns? Okay, seeing none, is anyone opposed to this resolution? Okay, that's carried then. So we'll move on to the next report. It's the CAO and it's 2021 capital status report.
That the report respecting the 2021 capital status be received as information.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Tom and Sherry. And I'll turn this back over to you, Andy, if you'd like to elaborate on this report, please.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor French. Essentially, the EEC, we went out to go, EECC. We went out to go get the skate tile quote, and it was significantly over budget. I talked to our director of operations, Rob Johnson, and he's kind of the opinion that in all his career, he's never seen you go out for budget, something that comes back over budget and you get it for less the next time around. So we do anticipate that it will cost more, and we're going to build those costs into the capital budget for next year and present them rather than go over budget this year. It is a bit of a pressure because the board will recall that we did delay and defer the ice resurfacer last year. So we are looking at some sizable capitals coming up.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Are there any questions or comments? Dominique, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I was just wondering how we had come up with the quote of 60,000 or the budgeted amount of 60,000. Was it based on other arenas doing similar work? And are the quotes similar to what other arenas are getting? Is it truly a market issue or a materials availability issue?
Through you, Your Worship, to Deputy Mayor Giguère. It's a little bit of both. We based it on the square footage of the previous year's project as well, and then we've looked at other projects and how they budgeted it, and we followed it very the similar timelines to how they did it per square foot. And I think with COVID, not to use that as an excuse, but we're seeing a lot of inflated pricing, and just a little bit of underquoting on my behalf, and then just with some of the material, and like I said, just some inflated pricing.
Go ahead, Dominique.
Thank you. Just as a follow-up comment, and I know this is extraordinary times, and with all due respect to Mr. Johnson, there might be a chance. We've seen other commodities come down in the last couple of months, so maybe this is the case that this will stabilize as well. So I wouldn't want, because this is an extraordinary time, I don't know that we can totally base on previous patterns. So fingers crossed, perhaps it will come down.
Yeah, are there other questions or comments?
Mayor French, I have a question.
Go ahead.
The budget for the ceiling pipe insulation, Doesn't that sound like something that we should have gone ahead with?
Through you, your worship, to Councillor Galinsky. Councillor Galinsky, that is on the that's on the radar to be completed September 20th.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the vote then. Is anyone opposed to this resolution? And it's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to the next report from the CAO 2021 emergency purchase.
That the report respecting the 2021 emergency purchase be received as information.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Don't be shy, Dominique and Tom. Okay, I'll turn this over to you, Andy, if you want to give us a bit more information, please.
Thank you, Chair French. There's never an instance where staff like to use emergency purchasing, but in discussion with our Director of Operations, we didn't think this could wait. I think there's a potential couple pictures that we might have of this. Josh is trying to put up there. You can kind of see how corroded both the tank and the pipe were here when we replaced them. So it was something that we thought really needed to be done for the overall operation and even the safety of this building. And it was completed and done quickly. And I don't know, Tom, if you have anything else to add to that.
Yes, thank you, Andy. Once we put the second pad of ice in, we really started to see it get a lot of water loss. And there were holes in pitting on the backside where it was inaccessible. Staff previously did some repairs to the tank, and we do have the condensing unit scheduled for 2022 to be replaced. But the tank itself, it was just, we were chasing all these leaks all the time, and it was causing flooding in the compressor room. So we did our research and we went with the poly tank and poly fittings. And I think, you know, we've put the complex in a good position. The tank's life cycle could be indefinite being indoors, where the steel tank would have about a 15-year life cycle.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll call the vote then. Is anyone opposed to this resolution? Okay, then it's carried. Thank you. The next report is the CAO Trillium Community Building Fund.
That the report respecting the Trillium grant be received as information, and that the EECC board support the submission of the EECC parking lot rehabilitation to the Ontario Trillium Fund Community Building Capital Stream Opportunity, and that the EECC board request the support of the councils of the Township of Malahide and the Town of Elmer for the submission of the EECC parking lot rehabilitation to the Ontario Trillium Fund Community Building Capital Stream Opportunity.
Thank you, Josh. Someone to move and someone to second.
We'll move it.
Mark and Scott. And I'll turn this back over again to our CAO. If you would like to give more information on this, please.
Thank you, Chair French. So staff have reviewed a number of the capital projects coming up for the EECC for this grant opportunity. This grant opportunity really is exciting because it could fund 100% of the project due to the size of our municipalities. Overall, we would be asking for the very top end of the grant fund, but I think that dollars would go the furthest for the EEC and would relieve the EECC and would relieve pressures on other areas of our capital planning and reserve planning for this center.
Thank you, Andy. Are there any questions or comments concerning this resolution? We'll start with Arthur first. Go ahead, Art.
Yes, Your Worship. I understand it's $500,000. Is that right? How far will this go to fix the parking lot? Because it's a fairly large parking lot. So are you piecemealing it again or looking at replacing the whole parking lot?
So through you, Chair French, initially this project had gone out for quotation before, and it came back at over year 560. So we would try to scope the project so that we could complete the whole lot. That might make a bit of a change in the overall project, but we would try to stretch it as far as we could. And part of what we might do is we might submit something and be back here again for a small budget amendment if we did get the grant funding for 500.
Further to that, are you going to redo the surface? I assume you're not going to dig up the whole parking lot. You're just going to redo the surface, correct?
Through you, Chair French. Yeah, I believe it would be to redo the entire surface, but there's also with a parking lot, there's a lot of areas of pitting, and we want to make sure that we address it so that it's not something that we have to come back at again in the next 20 years. We want to have a parking lot that will stand the test of time.
I believe, Tom, you were next.
Through you, Mayor French. So is the parking lot ready to be resurfaced? It had a bit of a drainage issue, I think, before. That was before my time on council, and they were forever fixing it and patching it. Is it ready to do now? It just has to be dug up and resurfaced, or what? Because we really can't afford to do it once, let alone twice. So we need it done right the first time. Or the second time, I mean.
Yeah, so the project was in the, it's been put in the 2023 capital. So we would think that it is ready for it. We might need to get, obviously, some part of the project would be getting an engineer to assess how best to do the work.
Thank you.
Pete, did you have a comment?
I did, but those questions have been answered and they dealt with the scope of the project.
Okay. Are there any other questions or concerns? I don't see anybody. Okay, is anyone opposed to this resolution? Okay, then it's carried. Thank you. And the last item up is the Director of Corporate and Legislative Services. Use of Indigenous images, themes in the East Elgin Community Complex Facility Policy.
Right. That the report entitled Use of Indigenous Images and Themes in the EECC Facility Policy be received as information, and that the board approves the use of Indigenous images, themes in the EECC Facility Policy as presented, and that the board directs EECC staff to send the use of Indigenous images and themes in the EECC Facility Policy to the Namarand Friendship Center for information and comment, and further that the board directs EECC staff to take the necessary administrative actions to integrate the policy with existing operations.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Sherry and Dominique. Okay, I'll turn this over to you, Josh, if you don't mind elaborating on this report, please.
Certainly, through you, Chair French, this report's follow-up to correspondence that was received from the Ontario Human Rights Commission in 2019 relating to the use of Indigenous sports themed logos in the EECC. At the time of receiving that correspondence, staff conducted a facilities audit just to ensure that there were no problematic logos that were on display. Staff also confirmed at that time that while the facility had been rented, infrequently, I will say, to a non-Indigenous organization that has an Indigenous themed sports logo. The town, or rather the EECC, apologize, the EECC had no formal relationship or endorsement of that team. And the only record that we had were expired facility rental agreements. At this point, staff are recommending that the board consider approving the attached policy to carry out the final recommendations from the Ontario Human Rights Commission. And it's worth noting that the attached policy has been based off of the City of Mississauga use of Indigenous images and themes policy, which was prepared following legal proceedings and is based on case law from 2018. The main objective of the draft policy is really to ensure that the EECC doesn't permit the display of any Indigenous images in the facility that are related to non-Indigenous sports organizations, and also to provide a framework for working with Indigenous groups as well as community sports groups to proactively build awareness of the policy through open communication and education. Finally, it's worth noting that in accordance with the Human Rights Commission recommendation, staff are recommending that once approved, that policy be circulated to the Namarand Friendship Center for information and comment. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Josh. Are there any questions for Josh? Okay, seeing none, is anyone opposed to this resolution? And it's carried. Thank you. Are there any inquiries by members? Okay, there's no reason for closed session this evening, so we'll move to adjournment.
That the board meeting of September 8th, 2021 be adjourned at 7:25 p.m.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Mark and Sherry. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, is anyone opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. Thank you for attending and have a great evening.
Have a good night. Thanks,
Have a good night,
everyone.
everybody. Thank you.